I have several guests here in the studio, and I really thank them for taking the time to be with us. We're going to be, I'm going to be introducing them in, in various orders. We have Kate, or Kateryna, joining us. Again, her last name I cannot pronounce. But she is here in Carteret County. She is a refugee, Ukrainian refugee. We're going to get her story here in a few moments. But I'm going to start off with her host, Pat Curley from Stella. And Pat, I'm going to get you to get close to that microphone and tell us who you are and how you came about being the host for Kate.
Great. My name is Pat Curley. I live in Stella with my wife, Nancy. I'm very involved in Rotary International, and Rotary International has partnered with an organization called Welcome Connect, or Welcome US. Mm-hmm. And they were just asking folks that were Rotarians. Basically, Rotarians have a lot of connections in the community, but they were asking us to consider sponsoring a refugee. And so I went on to the Welcome Connect site. And by the way, I'm a retired Marine. I had 3 of my fellow retired Marines actually go over to Ukraine to fight, and I thought, wow, if they can do that, I can be inconvenienced for a little while. So when you go on this Welcome Connect, Welcome US site, it's almost like a dating site. So you put in your information, and of course we live right near the base, so I put in there, like, we have machine gun fire, artillery fire, helicopters. It could be kind of stressful traumatic for some people, yeah. I talked about, we're not Odessa, we're Eastern North Carolina, and we put that out there, and we probably talked to 40 or 50 families. Mm-hmm. The need is so high, and so they connect to you and talk about themselves, and basically you kind of work together and say, are we a good connection? Mm-hmm. And so we went through, and we just didn't have the resources for most of the families that came over. And I ran into Kate. She sent a little note out, and I was like, wow, she speaks English. That's a good thing.
How good is your Ukrainian?
What's that?
How good is your Russian?
It's terrible.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't even order a beer in Russian.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible. You can't survive in that environment.
I couldn't survive.
Right.
Yeah. So we actually, through Facebook and Zoom meetings and all, we talked to both Kate and her sister Daria back and forth. And I talked to the wife and said, so what do you think? We had these 2 young ladies. We have 2 empty bedrooms in our house. Are we willing to take this responsibility? And the wife said, yeah. And then we basically, got on there, and I said, Kate, would you like us to be your sponsor? And she and her sister looked at each other and said, yes, absolutely. And then we had to go through the process. So through immigration, we had to file forms, and we are financially responsible for them for 2 years. We had to raise about $3,000 per refugee to come in to cover costs and expenses and things like that. And we're helping them through the process. I will tell you, it's been a pleasure with Kate because she speaks English and she's very independent. So we've already gone through, we're waiting on Social Security cards and all that. And
she's got to get Social Security cards?
Yes, when they come in, so they're not really immigrants, they're more parolees.
Wow.
So when they come in, they actually get Medicaid for a year. They get some food stamps to help them out. The United States is actually helping them also.
Okay.
And again, through Rotary International, some of the clubs here are actually helping us in all that. I know the Wilmington Club, they have 2 women and 4 children that they've been sponsoring, and now they get 2 more families coming in. So this is, it's a big deal. And so, yeah, so if people are interested, they can look up Welcome US, and they can see how to log in there and how to get started.
All right, that was Pat Curley, and again, from Stella, and as you heard just a moment ago, Rotarian, and very active in Rotary, and this is not a Rotarian, or is it a Rotarian activity?
Well, if it's charity and doing good things for people, it's a Rotarian activity.
But okay.
But yeah, it's actually been featured in Rotary International articles and all, asking Rotarians to step up. So it is a partnership.
Wonderful. And I'm going to get to Kate here in just a moment. but I've got to bring in Patrick Whaley here for a moment. I'm going to get you close to that microphone. Patrick, of course, we've been talking, we a moment ago mentioned, we've been talking now, and he's done the calculation for 14 months on the issue of Ukraine every Monday afternoon, almost every Monday afternoon. And over the years, Patrick Curley, looking at Pastor Patrick Whaley, too many Patricks in here, hundreds of thousands of dollars raised through this endeavor that started actually with a lady in Carteret County who's go ahead, Janet Eshelman.
Correct.
And Janet Eshelman held a large yard sale at.
We just had lunch with Jane Capps.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
Well.
So, all right. So, with that, I think this is a great story, Patrick, that you and I were not aware of about the work that other organizations such as Rotary International are doing. I think that's a great story.
It is indeed.
And so
we applaud every organization that's reaching out and supporting.
Yeah. And of course, you want to make comment about this through First Methodist Church in Morehead City, working with First Citizens Bank. All the money raised goes directly to, share that with you, if you will, Patrick.
Yeah. All the donations that we receive at First Methodist Church in Morehead City goes through First Citizens Bank, and then we're able to send that over to our churches, both in Slovakia and throughout Ukraine, that they use that money to help people come to Western Ukraine, those that are in the war zone in Eastern Ukraine, and then the people in Slovakia will actually go over to Eastern Ukraine, to where the war's going on, and to help the least, the last, and the lost in those areas.
And by the way, first, I want to bring up First Citizens' name for a reason, at no charge. No expenses whatsoever. They bear all the burden for the transfer fees and all the rest of that. And I think that's a real compliment. So things are happening, Patrick, and I'm looking
we
at you.
We applaud that. We're excited about that.
I think this is great. All right, Kate, welcome.
Thank you.
And I heard the comment that you speak how many languages?
4 languages. Well, I can also understand some German and French, but unfortunately I can't speak them.
Okay, you understand them. Okay, I got to ask. Patrick Curley said you speak Korean.
Yes, that's correct.
Why Korean?
Well, few years ago, I was going to get a master's degree, and I was considering different universities around the world, mostly Europe. And then my friend who lived in Korea called me, and she was like, universities in Korea are quite good and it's much cheaper than in Europe. So would you be glad to came here? And I was like, okay, yeah. So yeah, I came there and I was living in Korea and I learned Korean language and yeah.
All right. I mean, now the languages you speak fluently, again, English, apparently, obviously. Yeah. Russian, Korean, and what was the fourth language?
Ukrainian.
Ukrainian. Oh, okay. All right. Well, okay. So Ukrainian language is different than Russian?
Yes, of course. They're 2 different languages.
Similar in some ways.
Okay.
But very different as well.
When I introduced Kate to Patrick Whaley, Pastor Patrick Whaley, he responded in Russian, and which I think pleased Kate. There's an opportunity here. All right, we are going to go to a break here in a moment. But Kate, let's talk about you and your experience. Where are you from originally?
I'm from Odessa. It's the south of the country.
Okay, and Patrick Whaley, as Pastor Whaley has been saying for some time, that he did not anticipate that the Russian onslaught, that they would target Odessa. Are they targeting Odessa?
They are. They are not targeting the center of Odessa, like the very, very center where all the historical buildings are, but all the streets where people live and around the city and the port part of the city, they are targeting it, yes.
Okay, and you left Odessa with your sister, am I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
When did you leave?
We left almost a year ago. And we left, just me and my sister.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very long, not an easy journey.
Where did you evacuate to?
Well, at first we went to Moldova because it's just across the border from Odessa, and it was quite easy to get there. Well, it wasn't easy because there was no gas and all the roads were closed. And also, I think many people already knew the story, but like when you need to go to Moldova border, there is a bridge you need to cross, to cross the river. And when we finally crossed the bridge 15 minutes ago, later, I saw in the news that it was bombed.
So it was bombed. This bridge is. Is this the only way to get into Moldova from?
There are other ways, but they are much longer. And it's not that easy. So it was the easiest way to get there.
So 15 minutes after you crossed the bridge, it was bombed.
Yeah.
Is it still usable?
I think it renewed now. Yeah, but at that time, like straight after the bombing, it wasn't usable. Yeah.
All right, you escaped from Ukraine into Moldova.
Yes, that's correct.
And then from there, where did you go?
We stayed in Moldova for 2 weeks because we were foolish enough to think that the war would be over in a month or about. But then the place we stayed in closed, and we find out that we have nowhere to go, actually. So, because the only European language I speak fluently is English, we went to Ireland, and we stayed there for a while. And again, the place we were staying in was about to close, so we were trying to find other ways to go somewhere else. And I found Welcome to Connect. I found Patrick and Nancy, who welcomed me here. Yeah.
All right, and where is your sister now?
Right now, she is on the west part of Ukraine because, she just turned 18 when we left the country. Mm-hmm. And when you're turning 18, you need to get a new passport, like a new ID. And she did not have a chance to do this. So because she don't have a passport, she can't travel here. And we are waiting for her to get her documents done. And after that, she will be able to come to US.
It's interesting, Pat Curley, that here we are, a refugee, and we're worried about a piece of paper for all intents and purposes, a passport. And yet, I mean,
it's been unsettling in a way. There's a lot of politics between Ukraine and Ireland. I understand Daria has been told that the passport has been printed. Mm-hmm. They just can't get it to her. And when you apply through this program, Kate got a notice that she has 90 days to travel. She got permission to travel. And so we were looking at trying to extend that as we were waiting for Daria. And about 2 weeks ago, we had a meeting. She said, no, we decided that I'm just going to go. I don't want to chance it because her permission to travel was expiring soon.
Okay.
And so that's where we're at right now.
All right. We're going to take a quick break. We've got more to come here. We're talking with Kate. And Kate, if you will, for the audience, pronounce your last name.
Zherdetska.
Okay. Pastor Patrick Whaley and Pat Curley here on Viewpoints. We're talking about the situation in Ukraine, and when we come back, I want to talk about the conditions related to the bombing of the dam in Donetsk, or Kherson. Okay. More to come here on Viewpoints. We have in the studio this afternoon several guests. We want to thank first, for those just joining us, Pat Curley. He is the host of Kate, Kateryna. Am I correct on that? Kateryna. And one more time, very quickly, you are with, what's the name of the organization, Pat?
I'm not with them. I work through them. And so the organization that we sponsored Kate through is an organization called Welcome.us.
Okay, that's for those listening. He's got it on his T-shirt. Welcome.us. We have Pastor Patrick Whaley here in the studio. Of course, he and I have been talking for quite some time about the situation in Ukraine, and we have Pat Curley's and his wife, their guest, and we're waiting for another guest. That's Is it?
That's right,
Daria.
Yeah, that's correct.
And she is 18, and she's back in Ukraine waiting for her passport so that she can return. She can return here, or come to the United States.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Now, let's talk here for a moment, Kate, about, well, pardon me. Let me go back to you, Patrick. Pat Curley. I've got to get Pat and Patrick here. You were telling us off air a few moments ago the circumstances that Kate was living in Ireland. She was...
Yes, and I was pretty amazed by that. So she would talk to us, and we were looking at the background. Where they were living was in a nursing home, in about a 10 by 10 bedroom with two other girls on bunk beds. I thought it was interesting that when Kate actually said, Daria and I are going to split up. I'm going to come first, and then Daria's going to follow. And I said, how does Daria feel about that? And she said, she is so happy because she gets the bottom bunk.
Kate, let's talk here for a moment about your experiences there during the war. And my question to you is, you said a few moments ago that you were expecting the war to be over in a couple of weeks. Was that a matter of and I'm going to ask you a very difficult question. Was that because you thought that possibly the Russian assault would be that quick and that complete? Or was it a matter you thought that the Russians might, just move a few hundred miles, well, I'll say miles or kilometers, into Ukraine and then stop? What was your thinking behind that thought of that it would last about 2 weeks?
Well, that's a complicated question because at first we all heard about the power of Russian army. It's like second army in the world. Mm-hmm. And of course, when the siege of Kiev was happening and like the warships in Odessa port and all that scary stuff, we thought that Russia would win in a few days, mm-hmm. and we were preparing ourselves to the worst possibilities. Like we were really prepared for anything. And when we left and we were waiting, we saw the news that Ukrainian army are actually defeating mm-hmm. Russians at some fields, and we thought like maybe we would be lucky enough to win this war quick. Okay. And yeah, but it did not happen, unfortunately.
Well, it didn't happen, but let's talk here for a moment. The rest of the world was very prepared for Russia to overwhelm Ukraine. It didn't happen. What would you say to me, an American, about what is needed to assist Ukraine in its war?
Well, for now, it's airplanes. I think we all know about
right.
about this question, and our president is asking for them. It's very important because the fields Ukrainian army are fighting right now is very difficult, and this area is very much occupied, and it's very hard for them to mm-hmm. move forward. So all the help that Americans can provide would be very appreciated.
All right. You've talked about the war. Obviously, there is need for also personnel. Is the population behind this war?
Yes, sure. We have a lot of huge volunteer movements. Mm-hmm. And actually, the huge amount of money that are helping Ukrainian army are saved and raised from Ukrainians themselves, and we are donating money every day for our army. And myself, myself, was donating quite a big amount of money. Like, I don't have much, but
Right. I
I'm still
understand that. Well,
donating.
that's fine.
Donating as many as they can, because it's really important for them to get any help they can get.
So the morale in the country is strong.
Yes, of course. It's our land, it's our country, and we do not want to give it to Russians.
What would have happened? Would Ukraine have been would Ukraine have been passive had the Russians won, or would Ukrainians initiated some sort of I'll use the word subterfuge, some sort of guerrilla efforts to drive the Russians out?
Well, you're not quite wrong, because they're making the same as fascists were making
Right,
at World
they
War
are, yeah.
II. So but Ukrainians would have been passive in any circumstances. Okay. It's just not how we're raised, not how we are.
Give us your opinion. What is your feeling about Russia?
Well, you want to hear the truth?
Yes.
Well, let's say I'm not a big fan of this country.
Okay.
And
we've talked about this, Pastor Patrick Whaley, that a lot of Russians are beginning to wonder about the war in Ukraine. Am I correct on that?
Correct. They just can't protest because, unlike in America, I mean, it's an immediate at least 7 years in jail.
And let me just say to you that the reason Pastor Whaley knows about this is he's in contact with friends who are in Russia.
That's right.
All right. When we come back, I'm going to take a quick break. I want to talk about the situation with the bombing of the dam and how critical that is. We have with us this afternoon Patrick Whaley, who is the host, along with his wife, of Patrick Curley. I'm sorry, Patrick Curley. I was pointing at you, Patrick Curley. Too many Patricks in here. Who, along with his wife, is the host of Kate, and soon to be her sister arriving, and Patrick Whaley, of course, with First Methodist Church in Morehead City, and our guest Kate. And I am not going to try to pronounce her last name. Stay with us for more here on Viewpoints. We have in the studio several guests, and Kate is joining us, and I would attempt, but I'm not going to pronounce her last name. Kate, we were talking a few moments ago off air. Now that you're here in the States, and Pat Curley, your host, commented, you're kind of a parolee, if you will. That's exactly that's the title. Okay. And so if you are able to work, what skills do you have? I was intrigued by this.
Well, quite a few, actually. But the main field I was working in, it's actually the IT field, information technologies, like computer science. And I had a very big experience as a tech assistant. And I would like to continue my path in this field and work like a tech assistant.
But wait a second, you also acknowledged that you were a journalist too.
I had a degree in journalism.
You stop right there. We've got you on board. That's fine. This is great. All right. So you do have skills. I say you do have skills. They're if you will, we can actually get her to work here in the States. And I would assume that's the case with a lot of the refugees. Go ahead, Patrick.
Yes, I tell Kate her job is to get out of my house. And so we're not here to just host them. We're just sponsoring her to come in to establish her own life. So we need to get a driver's license and a car and a job and an apartment and get them started, get them on out there.
Outstanding. And the program that you brought her here, I want to keep mentioning this, is welcome.us.
That's right.
Welcome.us. All right. I've been teasing it all day long. The dam that was destroyed or damaged, I don't know if it's necessary to call it destroyed, in Kherson. What are you hearing from anyone in Ukraine and Patrick Whaley, same question to you because I know you've been in contact with him. What are you hearing, Kate?
Well, first of all, I can hear people's anger.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a huge damage not only to the city and to the people whose life it took. It's a lot of damage for an ecosystem of our country, and not only our country, because the Black Sea's ecosystem is going to be destroyed.
The Black Sea's ecosystem is involved in this?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's a very, very big and terrifying event.
The Dnipro goes into
Patrick,
the Black Sea.
okay.
The Dnipro River goes into the Black Sea.
Okay. Now,
But also the power plant, the nuclear power plant, has been closed because of this.
and of course they need it for the cooling. They're cooling. They called it cooling down of the facility. All right, and I understand that it also will greatly injure the agricultural community as well.
Of course. Actually, my father is working with Ukrainian farmers, and he is strongly involved in the farmer community. And as I know from his words, it's a damage that cannot be covered right now because the fields that were flooded by this dam and this river will not produce any plants in the next few years and maybe more. So it's a huge damage.
You know, we've talked about this in the past. The Ukrainian grain is critical to the world food supply. And that leads me to the question, what do you hear from the Ukrainian farmers, from the farmers in Ukraine, Kate?
Well, personally, me, nothing. But I speak to my father, who is involved, and his business is very much damaged by this because the farmers could not work. It's just not possible for them right now because if the field is not flooded, destroyed, or it's not occupied by Russians, most definitely it's mined, like by mines and by Russian bombs. Right. So it's very dangerous, and actually many farmers died when they were working, just trying to get supplies to the Ukraine and the rest of the world.
So many questions to ask, and we've had just a few moments. We're probably going to continue this conversation and put it on our blog, I might add, here on Viewpoints. Let's continue this. I want to point to the issue. I'm pointing to your phone here, Kate. I want to talk about communications here in a moment. But Patrick, I want to go to you. I want you to get close to that microphone if you would. All right. Yeah. You know, it is interesting, and I'm talking to both Kate and Pat Curley, Pat being the host along with his wife. We're seeing this war take place, unfold in real time. And so my first question to you, Kate, is it almost dreamlike, use the word surreal, that you are here, yet you have family and friends who are under constant bombardment back home? What is it like for you?
I don't think I would be able to explain all my feelings in English because it's too complicated for my vocabulary, but it's very frustrating and it's very hard to understand that while I am here in a safe place, people there giving their life, and that maybe next day I will call my parents and they will not answer.
And Odessa is, you said, we talked about this earlier, Odessa is now being targeted, but only the living areas, the residential areas. Where
Yeah, mostly.
Pat Curley, here you are. You've been watching this. You said something at the opening of the program which caught my attention. You are a former active duty Marine. Once a Marine, always a Marine. We'll acknowledge that. That's right. So you know Marines that have actually picked up stakes and gone to the Ukraine to actually assist the Ukrainian army and the people of Ukraine. What is it from your perspective as you're watching this, as you're bringing in a refugee. I'm curious what goes through your mind in this regard.
Well, this is it's a global tragedy. It's a world tragedy. And many of us, say, well, something's got to be done. And I always said there's three types of people in the world. There's problem makers, problem solvers, and problem identifiers. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people say that's a problem, this is a problem, and there's a few who just step up and say, let's go do something about it. Mm-hmm. And so we all have our strengths and resources, and I look at this because of my scouting background. I am pledged to help other people at all times, and I thought, well, I can do this. We have the resources, and we'll be able to help out. That's great. And I do want to share this. I'm constantly asking Kate, are you okay? Mm-hmm. I'm very, very, very sensitive to that because I can't imagine what it must be like for her. She did teach me a lesson yesterday at dinner because I started talking, and she said, in the Ukraine at dinner, we don't talk about sad things.
Oh.
Only happy things. So I've learned that at dinner time, we only talk about good things and happy things.
And I will acknowledge that it was a difficult question I asked you, Kate, but my reason for doing that is so that the audience can understand. Again, I say it's surreal for you. It's surreal for us. We're watching this. We're watching it unfold, and the destruction and the lives lost. And we're sitting comfortably at home. And I think this is something that we as a community need to come to grips with. That there is, as you mentioned a moment ago, Pat, I loved it, a global tragedy unfolding in front of us as we speak right here today. I want to thank Kate first for your contribution. We're going to, by the way, I'm just going to tell the audience we're going to stay for a few more minutes and add this to our blog. I want to, Kate, Patrick Curley, and your wife for being the host, and Patrick Whaley. And we're going to stick around for a few more moments. I just will tease that and say, if you go to our blog site, or it's going to be on Spotify, Ross, you can hear the remainder of our conversation, which is just a few more minutes longer. Thanks for being with us here on Viewpoints. We're continuing our conversation for a few more minutes. I wanted to talk with Kate here, and Pastor Whaley and I have talked to individuals in Russia. Well, no, wait. Moldova, Slovakia, and Ukraine. Right?
And refugees that live in South
Carolina. But more importantly, the folks in theater. I'm going to use that term.
Correct.
Slovakia, Moldova, Ukraine. And I'm looking at you, Kate, in relationship. You've got an Apple iPhone.
Yep, I am.
Okay. How long have you had that phone?
4 years,
okay.
I think.
So, all right. My reason for asking that question, and Patrick, we were talking about this, about the conversations you had with Daria, her sister, and Kate. Obviously, it was by cell phone?
Well, we actually used Zoom.
Or Zoom, okay.
We used Facebook Messenger.
Okay.
We used a couple of different formats.
This is interesting, Kate. The fact that you are not isolated, I say you, those in Ukraine are not isolated. And in other decades, Patrick's not as old as I am, neither of them, but in other decades, this wouldn't have been possible because the communication systems would have been easily targeted, shut down. There'd be the difficulty of getting information out of the country or the like. All of that has changed radically. How important is that to the Ukrainians? Okay.
It's I could not explain the whole importance of this to Ukraine because as someone who lives in that country for my whole life, I can say that the majority of our economics is from export to another countries, like right. People's power, time, supplies, and all the other things. And if not this, I don't think Ukraine would be able to be such an advanced country and to...
that's interesting because, again, the rest... You even alluded to this a few moments ago. The rest of the country looked at the onslaught of the Russian army. I'm not sure, second, third largest army in the world. And highly technically skilled, et cetera, and they've been stymied. I mean, stopped in their tracks. You know, the point is that many in the world, not just in this country, worldwide, didn't think that Ukraine had the capacity for, you know, to face off a much larger manpower army. I'm looking at you, Patrick Whaley. You've had experience, of course, in Russia, lived for 15 years in the area, 25 total years. What do you say to this? I mean, we think that we're so highly progressive and ahead of everyone in technology, but we're not, are we?
You're talking about America?
Yeah, yes.
No, I mean, other countries certainly have very technical military equipment. I think the difference, and you can hear it in Kate's voice and what she's saying, Ukrainians are fighting for their life. Ukrainians are fighting for their culture, their identity. They've been hurt so many times back in Stalin's day and all the way through. Their little brother and Russia constantly puts their thumb on them. Mm-hmm. They're fighting for their very, very life. In my days in Russia, I mean, young men were trying to get out of the army. I told you that before, that they would break their own arm or leg or something and go to the doctor and not have to serve. That vodka, the alcohol is so rampant in Russia, in Ukraine, but not nearly as much as what it is in Russia. And so it's Putin's war. It's not the individual's war. There's some bad Russians, but most of which, and you've heard, that have quit the military, the Russian military.
Kate, do you see that, Pastor Whaley's remarks, that you see this as Putin's war and not just the Russian people's war?
Well, I see it as the Putin's war, and also I see it as the war of those people who agreed to go there.
Okay.
Because I know many people in Russia are against it, and I had a friend in Russia. I have a friend in Russia who was going to the meetings and to protests against the war, and actually she got in trouble and was forced to leave the country because of that.
This goes back to Patrick Whaley's comment that any display will end up going to prison.
Correct.
Patrick Curley, your thoughts on this?
I have been with Kateryna for 7 days, and when you see the level of intelligence, of resistance, of courage, I wouldn't want to fight against a Ukrainian. It's amazing. It's amazing, and I just that's one of the biggest reasons why she's here now, is in our conversations. I can remember at one point she started crying. She kind of wiped her tear away and said, "I have no right to cry." You know, and I was like, "Wow, she's tough," and it's been a pleasure. It's been the most wonderful experience I've ever had, is sponsoring her and having her come over.
Patrick Whaley, of course, you're actually a third party in this regard. You've been there. You know these people. You agree with Pat Curley's comment?
Absolutely.
Okay. Kate, as we wrap it up with you today, and I'm going to ask you one last time, and of course, you used the word anger a few minutes ago in our conversation. What would you like us to recognize and to not just do, but what would you like us to recognize about what you and millions of Ukrainians are dealing with today?
Well, first of all, I want to say that no movie and no book can prepare you for what war is. It's very different. Mm-hmm. And the situations and the pain people are going through in Ukraine is just you can't even imagine. Mm-hmm. So the only thing we need right now is the help for our army, because our army is what holding Russians from destroying the democracy in Europe. And
I'm going to make note of that. The democracy in Europe. So Ukraine sees it that way too.
Of course, Ukraine,
Okay.
right now, Ukraine is the shield of Europe because Russians wouldn't stop. If they would be able to win this war, they would not stop in Ukraine. So Ukraine is the shield of Europe right now.
I love that term. We'll leave it right there. Ukraine, the shield of Europe. Pat Curley, thank you very much for making this available, this possible, for not only getting Kate here today, but also inviting her to come to the country. And her sister hopefully will return or join her quickly. Very best to you. Thank you very much. I just want to make one last comment. This is being podcast. Welcome.us. Go to that website and you'll get all the information that led Pat Curley to this experience, and his wife. And to go ahead.
Can I say, we also have a GoFundMe site if you would like to contribute directly to supporting Kate and her sister Daria.
Okay.
I can give you the address to the GoFundMe site.
All right.
Or you can just look up Helping Ukrainians Start a New Life, and you'll see that.
Helping Ukrainians Start a New Life.
Yes.
Okay. To Patrick Whaley, of course, for his continued work here and assistance in this, and we're continuing to bring this attention to the country, to the community, but to the country. To Kate, our heartfelt appreciation for your investment of time and effort today, but also our heartfelt condolences and support for the destruction that you and your families and your country are facing. So know that here at the Talk Station, we care. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation.
That's our pleasure.